This particular training module is going to go more into the workflow. So I'm going to pull up a PDF of what the normal workflow is, so we can just kind of scroll through it and talk about it. Basically how it all starts off with is someone identifies a defect out there in the system, and that could come from a variety of different things, whether it could be something that a defect that spawned from a request, or it's something that tollway maintenance has brought up, or it's identified by one of the inspectors, or or a variety of different locations. Now, when this defect is identified, the place where this information is put into is the general defect work order. So as you create a task, you want to put it into this, and you're not really sure whose responsibility it is to fix this particular item. You're going to dump it into this general defect work order bucket. From here, the person who is responsible for combing through this general work order bucket is going to see if you create a non-asset based task, we're going to see if it's something that we can actually apply it to an individual asset. And after that, they're going to see if it's something, this work could be done by maintenance, or if it needs to be done by a contractor. If it's identified that it's something that could be done by tollway maintenance, they'll put it into the tollway maintenance specific work order. So it could be M1 through M16 or ITS maintenance. It really depends on the different elements. So as it goes into maintenance's court, they can now see the task in their individual work order bucket, and they can either they can or cannot do the work. So if they can do the work, they go and perform the work, and then they close the task. If they can't do the work, they'll want to take that and then move that into the general defect bucket at that point in time, but making sure that every time, and I'll pan over to right here, every time a task is moved from one work order to another, you need to put into the tracking just something that the reason why it was moved from one work order to another. So as it's moved from general work order into the maintenance and then back into the general work order, we want to see that history to make sure we're not having some sort of circular logic going on. So if it's something that maintenance says that they don't have the ability to do that, it's just something you put into the tracking in the task that says, hey guys, we don't have the ability to do this because of X, Y, and Z. And then at that point, that's whenever it gets into more of the system-wide team's court. So then we'll decide if it's the system-wide team will go through and figure out, all right, is this something that can be done in programmed work? Do we have programmed work coming down the road? And if it is, it can get put into one of those particular work order buckets. And if it's not, then it might be something that needs to be placed into a DUR to identify, so it gets fixed before the next program work comes down the road. So what ends up happening once they get into these individual buckets, whether it's program work or DUR work, all of the tasks at that point that have been put into those work orders get delivered via printing out a report of all the individual tasks that are in that, get delivered to the designer. So the DSE gets that information at scoping, and then they are to put those into their individual design plans. So the DSE at that point can is going to meet with the system-wide team at some point in time, and sometimes some of these defect tasks drop out, because sometimes they were just hey, it could be as simple as, hey, study this area because we had a flooding problem at one point in time. Well, if it was, looked at and it basically said, hey, we thought it might be a restriction issue, but really after looking into it more, it looks like it was probably just an inlet clogging issue. Those tasks drop out and then they get closed at that point in time. If they don't close out, they get put into a construction contract, and then the final walkthrough team at that point come through and they inspect the tasks, and they confirm that it's ready to be closed, and they can take a picture and close it, or it hasn't been fixed and it's not going to be fixed for X, Y, and Z, and then at that point it starts all back over again and gets put back into the general defect work order bucket. We don't want to see that happen very often, but it does happen from time to time. Once we actually close all of the tasks that are underneath that individual construction contract work order, then we'll end up closing the work order as well. The work order that's regarding the maintenance, it's just intended to be a long-lasting bucket to put tasks in. So even if all the tasks have been completed at one point in time, we won't close out that individual work order. It's just the work orders for a construction contract, because construction contracts do have an end.